Hey there, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week, the 302 crew makes a stop at the Biggs Museum of American Art, checking out an exhibit for one of Delaware's most iconic artists, Tom Wilson. Now, Wilson got his claim to fame in the beginning on the catwalks of Paris, but then gave it all up to pursue art. And there are a lot of people who are glad he did. A new exhibit displays all of his artwork on the walls here at Biggs, and we're going to give you a front row preview on the 302 straight ahead. Hey there, we are at the Biggs Museum of American Art, and we are talking about an icon in Delaware art, of course, Tom Wilson. I'm joined now by Biggs' brand new curator, Laura Fravel. Laura, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about Tom Wilson. He, is an icon in Delaware, but he didn't get his start here.
Well, he did actually.
Okay.
And that's one thing that we've discovered in this show is he went to high school here. He studied under some local artists and then went to the Rhode Island School of Design on their recommendation. So he had a little art training, but he was an absolute hunk. And while he was at the Rhode Island School of Design, he was discovered as a model. So when he graduates, he moves to New York and became Vogue's it guy. That for a few years he bounced around. He was in New York, he was in Paris, he was in Milan, in hundreds of advertisements that I've found. And then his father passes away, and he moves back to Delaware to take care of his mother, is what we've been told. But at that time also meets his partner in Delaware. So the gallery we're sitting in now, these are all views of basically southern Delaware. And he's playing around with some currents that he picked up in New York. So you see this kind of photorealist style that was getting to be trendy in the time. And Tom would have said that he wasn't paying too much attention to the trends, but from his art you can tell that he was looking at artists like Hopper, like Richard Estes, and kind of playing around with things that he was seeing out in the world. And a lot of these, they're local scenes, which is fun to bring visitors through the show, and they go, I know that Dairy Queen, I know that intersection. But they all seem a little surreal because he would do them from photo collages. That he would take a couple photographs and mix them together. So as you're looking closely, you'll see the perspective change. You'll see the shadows and the lighting change. And it kind of leaves you with this kind of uncanny feeling that you're wondering what's going on. Sometimes there'll be figures and you're not quite sure where they're going, what they're doing, how they're interacting with each other. And often the figures have the least detail in the scene, that he lavishes details on houses, on cars, and the people are they're blocks of color that are almost secondary. So they're very, I will say they reward close looking, that they're paintings that the more you look, the more you notice, the more is revealed. And you find wonderful things, like I'm looking at a painting behind you right now that has this very strange blue shadow under the woman that you wouldn't notice right away. And then you start to notice these little pops of colors that he sprinkles throughout.
It really is amazing when you look at his work. It's such a range, and this is something that Biggs has wanted to do for decades, but one thing led to another, and so here we are in 2022 talking about this.
Yeah, we originally wanted to do the show in 1999 when Tom's partner was still alive. And I don't know what happened at the time, but the show got canceled at that point. It got pushed. Ryan Grover, our previous curator, revived this, probably around 2018, and it was scheduled to open in March 2020, and then the world shut down. So I started March of this year, and at that point we'd announced the show was happening. Immediately I came on the job and I was trying to revive what I could from Ryan's original checklist. That in the intervening 2 years, some people had moved, some people had sadly passed away and paintings had changed hands. But we'd also found a few extra paintings in the meantime. So this is really the culmination of Ryan's efforts and my efforts, of friends and family of Tom Wilson coming together and making this happen through sheer willpower. Really through their networks put out that we need these paintings, and were able to find things that we couldn't find on our own too, and to get those loans for us.
And so you have so many different pieces. You had mentioned that he was Vogue's it guy for many, many years. And so you have a ton of photos of him. And the thing that I found curious in my research is that, while he was such a big deal in the modeling world, when he came home, a lot of his friends had no idea.
Yeah, he didn't want to lean into that too much. And I'm not quite sure why, but there were people who knew him for years before they knew he was a model here. But he just kept that part of his life separate. And it's interesting to me that you could live with somebody that handsome, and then maybe 3 years in, he'll pull a box out of the attic and start talking about stories of New York and going to fabulous parties with Warhol and his networks there. But they were always separate lives. And here too, I will say he fell in love with a chef. So I think he started to have a body shape that more closely matches the rest of us by the end of his life.
A normal person.
That's the best way to phrase that.
Yeah, who enjoyed eating like the rest of us. So that's good. That's
the
good.
back porch. Yeah.
So it's a transition that he was happy. He seemed like he was a happy guy from beginning to end, just trying to find his bliss in one place or another.
He was, and he had this absolutely magnetic smile in every photo I've seen of him, even towards the end. It's ear to ear, and it just draws you in.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about his work and this new exhibit when we return.
Hi, I'm Kathy Parado with the Delaware Museum of Nature and Science, and I love being here with our live animal friends and with 302.
Welcome back. We're at the Biggs Museum of American Art talking about Tom Wilson. Now, Laura, when you look at his work, it is so expansive in terms of the way he paints and what he paints. Talk to me a little bit about just the transition from, one area to another.
Yeah, his style seems to change throughout his career, and probably the earliest paintings in the show are much more surreal. That you can see he's starting to play with pattern, with color, with using photos as reference for his work. So we end up with these odd collages of, like we have one, there's a bright yellow circle with an elephant standing on it and a polka dot background. And he's just playing around with this odd mix of images. And then once he moves back to Delaware, it's like his style crystallizes, his eyes open, that it all comes together. And he has this uncanny ability to capture that quality of light in southern Delaware, that really bright light that washes out surfaces, that you get those sharp contrasts between black and white, that you get those really bright, vivid colors. And those are the paintings that he tends to do for himself. In the winter, when nothing else is going on, he'll work on these paintings, sometimes over years, lavishing details on them. He was the art director at the Back Porch Cafe in the summer, so he would show other artists' work, but also his own. And that was how he made his bread and butter, that he'd sell things out of the cafe, sometimes for astonishing prices. I've heard of people who had lunch there and bought $10,000, $20,000 paintings off the wall. They were just sitting there and loved them and took them home. But would also take portrait commissions. So that was how he made his yearly income. For families, sometimes they're more formal portraits. He has this great ability to capture that manic energy of children. And then also portraits in front of their houses. That wasn't enough to just show the family, but to show the whole environment they lived in, why they loved Delaware. So he'll have their house in the background, he'll have the family cars parked in front of the house, and then the family standing in the street in front of it. So you get the light, you get the atmosphere around them too. And then I will mention too, he loved cars. And that was a surprise to me going through his files, that we found whole extra folders of cars that he would add to collages. And he loved vintage cars too. He had a '59 Dodge himself. So there's a whole room in the exhibition that is just these wonderful portraits of cars, one of which is in the Biggs Museum's collection. And I think of it as a self-portrait of him, that it's his '59 Dodge in Dover, which is his birthplace, and bringing all these elements together. And then towards the end of his life, around 1990, he's diagnosed with HIV and just starts cranking out these pastels of his garden. And part of that is to raise money, that he knows he doesn't have much time left, and he wants to go on a European trip with his partner. So these things they sell quickly, they're commercial, people love them, people still have them in their homes and have kept them there for decades. But it's also a celebration of his partner's life with him, that this was the garden they shared together, this is where he taught classes. So it's celebrating the space, but also sort of going to those final moments. And at the end of his life, he's painting more his family farm. You get some images of long pathways, doorways with light ahead, and you can tell that he's really contemplating death and meditating that. But they are hauntingly beautiful paintings.
It really is a remarkable range, and when you look at them, just the expression on some of the portrait, the paintings, the one with the two gentlemen, in front of the gas station, you really get a sense that, these guys, it's a beautiful summer day, they're in front of this gas station, and they're just really kind of, you get a sense of the feeling of the time from, he's really good at emotion.
Yeah, and there's a joy in that too, that those are people that he knew. That was his friend's brother, and then another friend of theirs, and then their dog in the background. So kind of adding these little details that if you didn't know the people, you wouldn't pick up on, but the more you know, the more you start to notice these little things in the background.
Absolutely, and I really do enjoy the cat. Is that a Cadillac or it's a Thunderbird? What kind of car is that?
59 Dodge.
Dodge, so that's the car that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing, just the angles that he chooses.
It is, and in that folder I mentioned for the photo collages of extra cars, he's got cars from different angles. And his car makes a few appearances. I'm trying to figure out, just for my own curiosity, when he bought it, because I've seen it in the background of some of his earliest modeling photos. So I think he had it for years and years and years and just loved it. And it must have looked like a spaceship driving around Dover. It's a very strange car. It had these pivoting seats in the front.
Yeah.
It had the option of having a record player in the back when you bought it new, which I don't think he had.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But he put it up for sale, which you can see in one of the paintings there.
That's a different car.
Oh, is it a different car?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I love that painting, too, because across the windshield of the car it says, "Everything works," which, coming out of the pandemic, that was kind of an icon for the show, too, is kind of make this show happen.
Absolutely.
Everything works.
Absolutely. And there's so much more to talk about when we return.
Hi, my name's Halsey Spruance with the Delaware Museum of Nature and Science. We love exploring the world with 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about a Delaware icon, Tom Wilson. Now, Laura, we're talking about how so many of these paintings look like, photographs, but he does something interesting with dots. What's that all about?
Yeah, the dots are something he starts in art school and then continues throughout his life. And I think early on, he's playing with pattern. Later on, it becomes more meditative, that some people sit and knit in the evening. He does dot paintings. And it's a great way to use up extra paint if he has just a little bit left in a tube. So you'll see the colors kind of reflect whatever he's working on at the time. But they also become great background for decoration, that some of them started as pieces of furniture. We have one that was originally a tabletop, and then after he painted it, he stuck hairpin legs on it and a glass top and used it as a coffee table for a while. We have another one that's the front of a cabinet in the show, and it looks like a wood panel, but it's actually hinged on the back, and you can see how he took this off an old piece of furniture from a yard sale and painted on it. So there's a way, too, that he's bringing the dots back into his environment. Some people I've met use these as paintings over their sofa, that they just perfectly match the colors of the room. But I wonder, having looked at his work overall, if he lived another 30 years, what his style would have been like, because it seems like he reinvents it every few years, and then some of these styles are radically different, too, that he's just finds ways to succeed in all these different styles, that none of them feel discordant.
His self-portrait is really telling. You don't know what he's trying to say there, but you can hear it. You can feel it speak to you. And, is it sorrow? Is it happiness? What is it that he's trying to say in that painting?
That is an excellent question, and I've wondered that too, because it is somewhat enigmatic. And it's the year before he moves back to Delaware. He's still working as a model, and it's very thickly and expressively painted too. That if you look at it up close, some of the brushstrokes, the oil paint is raised well off the canvas. So it is somewhat spontaneous, but there's no smile, that trademark smile, not the joy in his eyes. He's more contemplative of it.
Yeah, maybe he just wasn't happy with the way it originally turned out, because you can see the different layers, that maybe he was like, I'm an unfinished painting, maybe.
Yeah, and he took the trouble to bring that back from his travels to Delaware, and that stayed in the family. That's now owned by his partner's sister.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about the later years of his career before he passed away, I mean, he really had this sense of urgency that he wanted to not just make money, but kind of leave his mark and have, as many people see, a little bit of the magic that he had. So with the florals and talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think part of it was to leave his mark, but also to leave something for his partner. That he and his partner were diagnosed with HIV around the same time. And Tom, from the outset, was just convinced that he would die, and his partner was convinced that he would live. So they had very different outlooks on this. So Tom was trying to leave something for Leo, some sort of monetary legacy so that he could be taken care of. At the end, too, there's more focus on kind of what are also his earliest images. That in high school, he paints his family's farm. At the end, he comes back to the family's farm and does some images of that. They do go on their European vacation. He comes back and he has photos of statues that inspired him and artwork that he saw there, and he starts to collage that into the paintings too. So we have one of a statue in a soybean field on his family's farm. And then across the gallery you'll see towards the end kind of a more monochromatic, sparser painting of that very same spot on the farm where his style is changing as he's thinking more about some of the issues he's having, health issues. And that ended up being the spot where they scattered his ashes.
Oh, wow. That's really powerful. When you look at this painting, you don't anticipate. There's so many, the backstory. The thing I love about, coming and visiting the Biggs is the backstory to the artists, and the paintings and what they were doing and when they were doing it. So what would you say the legacy of Tom Wilson is?
Well, I'm amazed how many people in the area still know him and remember him, that he was just a joy to be around, and he must have been just the life of any party that he was at. And working on this show, everyone had good things to say about him, which is extraordinary to me, that everyone had wonderful stories and was eager to share them, eager to share their paintings with visitors at the museum. And if you go, once you realize who he is and you go around Southern Delaware, you notice his paintings everywhere, that they're over the bars and restaurants, that they're in people's homes over sofas, that they're in the library building, the courthouse, and you start to realize what this huge impact he had was, because he was prolific for the short time that he was here painting.
So the back porch, is that still around?
It is. The restaurant is still there, and we have a few paintings in the show from there. The large dot painting of the tabletop that I mentioned hangs at the back porch now, and they let us take it off their wall for the show, which was very sweet of them.
So you can come, check it out, and then go get something to eat and kind of full circle with your experience for Tom Wilson.
Yeah, and they've been very supportive of the show, too. They actually signed on as one of the exhibit sponsors to make sure that the story could be told.
That's fantastic. And it must have just been so hard to pick which pieces. I mean, can you talk about just the difficulty of, not being able to, for decades, this hasn't come together, then all of a sudden, brand new to Biggs, and you're the one that's got to do this iconic exhibit.
Yes, well, Ryan had laid the groundwork and had been in touch with many of the lenders before the pandemic, but there are some paintings that we know Tom made. We have his inventory, we have his slides of what he made that we could just never find. Like there's one I'd love to track down of, it's a pig in the foreground sitting in mud. In the background you see this perfect laundry line, and you can just tell the pig's trying to figure out how to take this down and to get it all dirty.
So tell us when people can come and check out the exhibit.
Well, the exhibit's on through October 16th. We are open Wednesday to Sunday, 11 to 4. And then we have programming around the show outside of those hours, too.
Excellent. Well, Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Tom Wilson.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be right back. For more information on any of the exhibits at the Biggs Museum, you can go to biggsmuseum.org. That'll do it for this week's episode of the 302. We're going to leave you now with some beauty shots of Dover. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on the 302.